Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. She left her earrings in the sink, not by accident. Her favorite perfume was still hanging in the hallway air. And the note on the fridge? It wasn't even passive-aggressive. It was just aggressive. Spending the night at Brennan's. Don't wait up. Or do. Whatever. No explanation. No apology. No shame. Just 10 words. And a little heart drawn in blue ink like this was some cutesy teenage tantrum. I didn't touch the note. I just stared at it like it might change if I waited long enough. Brennan. Her ex. The name I wasn't supposed to worry about. The man who, in her words, taught her what chaos looked like. I guess she missed the chaos. I guess I was too calm, too dependable, too boring. To me. She wanted to see what I'd do if she lit a match and tossed it into our marriage. But here's the thing. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't chase her down or blow up her phone. I did something worse. I started erasing her. I didn't scream into the night. I emptied drawers. I didn't throw her things. I folded them, packed them, labeled the boxes with a Sharpie like I was organizing my grief. Shoes. Scarves. Lies. She thought she had power because she left. But real power is what you do before they come back. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was crying or pacing or smashing things. No, that would have made it easier. I just sat there on the couch with a throw blanket across my lap, staring at the little blinking light on the Wi-Fi router. That dumb, rhythmic pulse, like it was mocking how still everything else had become. I kept waiting to hear her key in the lock, expecting some grand dramatic reentry, maybe mascara smudged, hair messy, ready to spin the whole thing like it meant nothing. But the door stayed silent, just like my phone. I didn't text. She didn't either. Around 4:30 a.m., I got up and went to the bedroom. Her side of the bed looked untouched, perfectly made, like it had been waiting for someone who no longer planned to return. I didn't lay down. Instead, I opened the closet and started taking her clothes out, one hanger at a time. I wasn't furious. I was numb. I packed her dresses carefully. Her stupid satin robe. Her bath products that always smelled like the inside of a spa. Everything went into boxes, but I didn't rush. It felt surgical. Controlled. Like I was finally doing something with all the feelings I hadn't said out loud. I even found the old photo strip from our first trip to the coast tucked in a drawer, her kissing my cheek, both of us grinning like idiots. I folded it in half and dropped it into a box labeled random. What else could I call it? I cleared the vanity. Took down the framed quote she loved so much. You can't heal in the same place you got hurt. It felt ironic now. The only thing I left untouched was the bottle of wine she kept for special nights. I set it out on the counter with 2 glasses. Not out of sentiment. I just wanted her to see it. I wanted her to feel that silence when she walked back into the apartment. Because silence, when done right, is louder than any scream. She came back just after noon. No knock. No shame. Just the sound of the key turning like it was any other Sunday. I was at the kitchen table, eating dry cereal because I hadn't bothered to go to the store. When the door opened, I didn't look up right away. I didn't want her to think I was waiting for her return, even though I was. Not because I missed her, but because I wanted to see the look on her face when the gravity of what she'd done finally landed. And it did. Fast. She stepped in like she expected to find a mess. Maybe me crying, or drinking, or broken in some visible, pathetic way. Instead, she found a perfectly clean apartment and 12 neatly stacked boxes labeled with her name. Her mouth opened, but no words came out at first. Then came the smile, small, confused, brittle. You're being dramatic, she said like this was some kind of performance on my part. But I didn't say anything. I just nodded toward the wine and the 2 untouched glasses on the counter. Her eyes followed and narrowed. What's this supposed to mean? She asked. I still didn't speak. Instead, I slid a manila envelope across the table, the one I'd filled over the last few weeks with screenshots, timestamps, and the truth she thought I'd never bother to look for. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just sat there and watched her expression collapse in real time. Like her face couldn't decide whether to be angry, scared, or humiliated. She dropped the envelope like it was burning her fingertips and snapped. So you've been spying on me? Her tone was sharp, but she was shaking. I finally spoke. No, I've been waking up. The silence that followed was deeper than anything we'd had before. She stood there, one hand still on the envelope, and looked around the room like she didn't recognize it anymore. Or maybe she didn't recognize me. But the thing that crushed me the most wasn't the silence. It was the way she looked, almost disappointed, like she had wanted me to fall apart. Like my calm was the real betrayal. She didn't pick up the envelope. Not really. She just tapped her nails on it like she was trying to decide if touching it again would give her leverage. It wouldn't. I stayed seated, letting the weight of the moment build. Marla hated silence. She always filled it with noise, or blame, or laughter when she wanted to deflect. But now, she had nothing. "You think this makes you strong?" she asked, voice sharper now. "You think being cold suddenly makes you in control?" I didn't answer. I was done answering. I'd spent years responding to her moods, adjusting to her tone, walking on conversational eggshells just to keep the peace. But the peace had been fake. A borrowed blanket that kept slipping off in the night. She circled the room, arms folded tight. "You know, I only went to Brennan's because I was angry," she finally said, like that explained everything. "You ignored me. You've been drifting." I needed a reaction, and I stood up. That was the moment. That's when everything shifted. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just walked over to the kitchen counter, opened the drawer, and took out the envelope I hadn't shown her yet, the one marked final. Inside were 2 signed copies of a lease agreement. Mine. A new apartment. No shared closets. No perfume in the hallway. No accusations hanging in the air. "You went looking for fire," I said quietly, "and I decided I didn't want to live in the smoke anymore." She froze. Her arms slowly unfolded. Her face, which was still holding onto the last scraps of defiance, suddenly cracked. "Wait, you're serious?" she whispered. "You're actually leaving?" I nodded once. No theatrics. No guilt trips. Just the truth, laid out in plain ink. And the scariest part for her? I meant it. I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't playing the wounded husband anymore. I was just done. And judging by the way she stared at those papers like they were written in a language she never thought I could speak, she finally realized she'd gone too far. She lit the match, but I controlled the burn. She followed me into the hallway barefoot, as if her presence alone could undo what had already begun unraveling. "Daryl, wait," she said, her voice half a command, half a plea. But I didn't stop walking. I grabbed the last of the labeled boxes, the one she hadn't noticed yet, the one that said memories. Inside was every birthday card she'd written me, our wedding invitation, and the faded movie ticket from the night she first kissed me. I wasn't planning to take it. I just didn't want her to pretend it meant anything anymore. She reached out like she was going to take it from me, but I shifted it away from her gently. "No," I said. "You gave these away a long time ago. You just didn't say it out loud." She flinched at that. I think some part of her still believed this was a stunt, that I was being melodramatic, that I'd come crawling back once I cooled off. But I didn't feel overheated. I felt clean. That terrified her more than rage ever could. "You don't get to play the victim now," she snapped suddenly, arms folded again like she was clinging to the last role she could play. "You shut down months ago. You've been distant, distracted. Don't pretend like you didn't drive me to this." That's when I laughed. It was dry and humorless, like dust blowing through an empty room. "You didn't cheat because I changed. You changed so you could cheat and not feel guilty about it," I said. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. "Not really." She just whispered, "I didn't think you'd actually leave." That made me pause, just for a second, because buried in her voice wasn't just surprise, it was regret. Not for what she did, but for miscalculating the man she thought I'd always be. She didn't want me, but she needed me broken. And when I chose piece over pieces, she realized she had no power left. I opened the door. The light from outside spilled in like a different life. She stood there in the hallway, arms limp at her sides, looking more lost than angry now. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't slam the door. I just walked out. And for the first time in years, I didn't look back. The new apartment was nothing special. Just a modest one-bedroom with yellowed walls and a faucet that groaned like it had secrets. But for me, it felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. I didn't bring much with me, just the essentials and that last box labeled memories. I wasn't sure why I took it at the time. Maybe I thought I'd need proof that once it hadn't all been a lie. Or maybe I just needed a reminder of what I was choosing to walk away from. The first night alone was quiet. Not peaceful, but quiet. No perfume in the sheets. No footsteps pacing in the other room. No staged affection. Just silence. It wasn't comfortable yet, but it was honest. I thought that was the end of the story. But stories like this never end when you want them to. 2 days later, She showed up. Not at the door, at my work. She just walked in like she had the right. Like the boundaries didn't apply to her anymore. I was in the middle of logging support tickets when I heard her voice behind me. We need to talk. I didn't turn around. My heart stuttered, but I kept typing. You can't just ghost me, she hissed quietly, trying to sound in control. I'm your wife. The words sounded strange coming from her. Hollow, like a costume she'd outgrown but didn't want to take off yet. I finally stood up and walked her outside. My coworkers were already glancing over, curious. She hated being ignored, and now I was doing it in public. Her eyes were wide, not with sorrow, but with disbelief. You're really doing this? She said. You're throwing everything away because of one night? I laughed, not bitterly, just tired. It wasn't one night, I replied. It was every lie you told before it. Her face hardened. She was used to holding the upper hand, the one with the story, the justification, the apology ready just in case. But now, I wasn't asking for it. I wasn't begging to be chosen. I had already chosen me. This isn't you, she whispered, like I'd become a stranger. I nodded. Exactly. That's why it's working. She blinked, stunned. And that's when I saw it. Not heartbreak, not guilt. Fear. She didn't think I had it in me. But walking away wasn't the hard part. The hard part was staying gone. And I was already past that. I thought that would be the end of it. Her showing up at work, getting shut down, realizing the chapter was closed. But people like Marla don't quietly walk off stage. No, they rewrite the script. When I didn't respond to her texts, which ranged from cold guilt-tripping to sudden nostalgia bombs, she pivoted. Fast. By the end of the week, I started hearing from mutual friends. Little comments here and there. Hey, man, I heard you've been going through something. Or worse. Marla says you've been really unstable lately. The implication was clear. If she couldn't get me to play the broken husband, she'd cast me as the villain in her version of events. And I'll admit, it got to me. I spent 2 nights just sitting on the floor of my apartment, trying to decide if saying nothing made me strong or cowardly. But every time I considered texting her just to clarify, to correct her narrative, I remembered that night. The note on the fridge. The scent on her pillow. The smirk she wore when she left. She'd made her choice. And now she didn't like the consequences. One morning, I found an envelope taped to my apartment door. No name. Just my first initial. Inside was a photo of us from our honeymoon. Me laughing, her looking at me like I was magic. On the back, in her handwriting, it said, "We were real. I made a mistake. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was tempted, but because I realized how skilled she was at choosing the exact weapon for every moment. When silence didn't work, she brought out sentiment. When guilt failed, she turned to nostalgia. I didn't rip the photo up. I didn't send a cruel reply. I just slid it into the same box I had brought from the old place. Memories. And then I sealed the lid with duct tape. Twice. That night, I poured myself a glass of the wine she never drank and sat out on the small balcony. No drama. No music. Just the hum of distant traffic and the knowledge that her reach no longer touched me. She thought silence was a weakness. But she was wrong. Silence, when chosen, is power. And I was done explaining mine. 3 months passed. Quietly. No more photos. No texts. No surprise visits to work. I think she finally understood that the version of me she used to manipulate no longer lived in this world. And the truth is, I didn't hate her. I didn't need revenge, or a breakdown, or some dramatic confrontation. I just needed distance. And for the first time in a long time, I gave that to myself. The apartment started to feel like home. I bought plants I didn't know how to take care of, got a couch that didn't sag in the middle, and hung up prints I liked without having to check if they matched someone else's aesthetic. On Sundays, I made pancakes without worrying if they were too dense. I even started going to a local coffee shop where the barista remembered my name and always added an extra drizzle of caramel, just because. And one afternoon, just an ordinary, sunlit Tuesday, I found myself laughing. Like, really laughing. Not forced, not polite, but deep from the stomach. It was a dumb meme someone sent me, but it hit hard. And it made me realize I hadn't thought about her all day. Not once. That night, I took the box labeled Memories, drove it to a recycling bin behind the gas station, and left it there. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. The past wasn't mine anymore. My story didn't end when she walked out. It started the moment I didn't chase her. When I chose to walk toward something instead of clinging to what was falling apart. I'm not saying everything's perfect. I still have bad days. I still overthink. But I sleep better. I smile more. And when I look in the mirror, I see someone who didn't just survive betrayal. I see someone who grew from it. Thanks for listening to my story here on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever had to walk away from someone who tried to test your worth, let us know in the comments. What part of this story hit home the most for you? And remember, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay silent and walk away.